aging systems were cumbersome at best.
They were, I'll use a very technical term, they were very kludgy.
I'm here at Dow, and we are going to cover their journey to the cloud. A journey that starts with virtualizing storage and takes us all the way to running storage natively from the cloud. This is a massive story, a fun story, and it's one full of technical details that I want to be able to share with you, because the devil is in details, but also truth is in the details. Lots of that to come. Have fun.
When I first got here, our file structure, what we call filers, storage, within our environment was on a legacy system that housed Windows servers to physical appliances, and this was technical debt that was aging rapidly. We had problems with how we upgrade, how we expand, how do we manage that, how do we get tree size reporting, how do we get relative urgent data or even immediate data on how it's being stored, what it's being used for, etc.
I mean, everybody was happy with the status quo from an end user perspective. They were happy with performance, but from a management standpoint, capacity management. Can I add more drives? I don't know. Do we have to add another tray? Well, can that array take another tray? So there was that capacity management. And then managing 150 global sites, basically individually. How do I have a team that manages this across that wide range of equipment? We're doing nightly snapshots. Who's monitoring those nightly snapshots? How do we restore from that, recover from that? What is my RTO, to bring that hardware back online if it had failed? Just a lot of cumbersome things from a management standpoint. We had to put a lot of care and feeding into that environment. Started an initiative, how do we transform from these physical proprietary filers into something that we can take advantage of the cloud? Dow was starting to move towards a cloud. We had a small team that was looking at how we transform this space. We came to the realization fairly quickly that this would be a large initiative. There's a lot of moving pieces we didn't think about. How do we train the support team? All the tools that we had built around these filers, these file shares.
The human change, our service management platform, how we capture all of the data that's coming in, how we report on that, how do we secure this in a right manner and take care of some of the security issues we had with the legacy hardware that we were using to do. As a leadership from our C-level leadership, the cloud-first approach led us in the direction to go, but didn't give us an answer. So we had to devise how will we get there and how do we transform easily.
To really transform, the biggest thing we could really do was stick with the incumbent and look into their virtual product. That was more of a like for like, lateral move. All the tools worked, the user experience is the same, but it allowed us to abstract the software, the storage layer via the virtual software and get away from the proprietary hardware. That introduced us into commodity HCI environment. We were able to move on to commodity hardware.
At the time, we had some needs to also supply VMO resource space for other applications. So we had the idea of a HCI environment that we could just virtualize that legacy filer solution as just a VM, which gave us that first component into virtualization. And then we continued into, all right, well, how do I expand that? And where do I store the backups? Which led to the component of we can grab a piece of this cloud-first initiative by doing some tiering.
We started tiering our cold data to our cloud provider. We also stood up virtual filers in the cloud environment. So now instead of snapshotting between sites, I can now snapshot to the cloud, and I'm now consuming those cloud resources. One thing with the tiering that kind of was that migration, you need all that space on premise. We didn't think, hey, cloud tiering, that will address our capacity issues. Well, it doesn't address it day one when you're doing those migrations. And even after we cold tier, there are still some capacity challenges on premise. I still have to manage, okay, I'm cold tiering things over 30 days, but now I still have to manage that on premise capacity.
Azure also gave us a side benefit. We realized, but didn't really fully realize, the DR capabilities of the cloud. Instead of going to the hubs or another site, now we can DR to the cloud. We can get to that data anywhere. We don't even have to worry about, oh, do I have to go in country? Now I can transport that data to anywhere in the globe if I need it, at another manufacturing plant or another business office. So going to our cloud provider for that tiering gave us an added DR benefit.
So that move did meet some of our goals as far as, okay, this is our first exposure into storing this kind of data in the cloud. Dow being a conservative, kind of risk-averse company, we took baby steps.
So another component of our transformation was Dow had already successfully migrated our Office environment. So Office 365, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and it was very successful for the end users for that typical Office environment. The thought was, why can't we migrate all of it there? So we looked at, can we move the filer space to that environment? But we quickly realized that not everything fits in that environment. Not only is it size limitations or growth or flexibility for that environment, we mapped data to a SharePoint, or we mapped drives to servers, and we could never do that with SharePoint Online. We also had concerns from our global manufacturing space that had safety and security. They didn't want that loss of access to the cloud to ever hinder critical data. So we had to devise a plan for keeping things on premise and still have that long-term and flexible storage into the cloud for DR purposes.
We took another hard look at how do we truly transform our file shares into a cloud-first, philosophy. We came to the realization that while we virtualized and we abstracted the storage from the proprietary hardware, we truly didn't transform into that cloud-first ideal situation that we wanted. We had challenges that we thought we could fix with the cloud. Global collaboration, capacity management, ease of use kind of things. So we took another hard look at this transformation, and we looked at a number of products. We looked at our incumbent. You could tell they were altered to try and fit into the cloud. They were, I'll use a very technical term, they were very kludgy. Hey, let's take this product and we'll rewrap it, and then we'll call it a cloud product. And it really wasn't. It was just some fancy bows and ribbons on a more on-premise traditional type storage. And so you were installing different pieces, you were licensing all these different agents or products.
Or sell us that the cloud is this vast cloud of unfinished space that you can use endlessly, when that's not true. You move to some products and there's unlimited space in the cloud, but we have to keep ours within a container. You can expand that, but I've got to add another container, and you start thinking, I thought the cloud was infinite.
We came up with the checklist of what our next generation file share should be, and things like cloud, our cloud first design. Will we be able to take advantage of the cloud capacity object storage, cheap cloud storage? Will we be able to manage it easily with a single pane of glass? What are my limits? Do I have, what kind of limits do I have around capacity, file size, number of files?
Transform easily, because our size of our departments were not the largest either, so we didn't want to have to bring on resources just to migrate to us.
Yeah, how do I manage this with a bare minimum effort? Who is truly, a cloud first design? Who has the right management tools? Who has the right capacity and features? And we decided Nasuni. Nasuni hit all the check marks, and it would scale like we need. It would address things as Scott mentioned. I'm a manufacturing site. I have documents that I have to keep on premise at all times. I have to have access no matter what. Nasuni check marks with that.
A true in-cloud developed tool versus something that was adapted for Azure. You could tell right away, this is a cloud tool. This isn't something that was tried to port to the cloud. This was developed there. So it fit everywhere that we needed to. We could access it from anywhere in the globe, from any one of the sites that we had. Early on, we were using express routes to get there. We've transformed into our SD-WAN environment now. So those speeds and feeds have even increased. Now we give people access to Nasuni, the same experience that they have with Office 365 or SharePoint Online or their OneDrive. And so far been very, very successful.
We came to the conclusion that we would POC Nasuni, bring them in, let's set it up in a lab. And I did the first POC. We kind of broke it down into two sections. The first section was a very in-depth, in a lab, very controlled environment.
Wait, this is a great part. So when we first brought in Nasuni, and I brought John in, and they said, okay, we'll set up time to educate that. And he said, I'm already done. It's already installed. So it was that easy, not that easy, John is brilliant, but it was that intuitive to be able to set up. John could read through and figure out how to install it on his own, and so the base product showed how flexible and how easy it was to get started with Nasuni without a lot of support needed. Figuring out that we could start up in a matter of hours was huge lead into our POC.
Yeah, it was incredibly intuitive how to install and stand it up, again, versus some of the other products we looked at where it was not intuitive at all. There was so many moving pieces. Nasuni, I deploy my management console, I deploy an edge right from the marketplace. I connect them, I'm up and running. It literally was...
Use our cloud credits. We didn't have to worry about licensing right away. We didn't have to worry about what's this going to cost to get started. So, which speaks well to the Nasuni team too. Extremely flexible in getting us up and running in that POC.
And so that POC was very small, just myself, learning the ins and outs, all the little nuances and all the check boxes and the switches, making sure I understood how things work. How do I connect, my edge? How does that snapshot work? How do I, the credentials needed? How does that work? What impact to our firewalls will I need to change? Get that procedure figured out. And then we opened it up to a broader POC, more of a user acceptance testing kind of POC. We deployed 3 edges around the world. Dow has a large number of engineers that collaborate globally. So we may have an engineer in Houston, an engineer in Europe, an engineer in India.
All of those global continental regions can share the same data. They can pull that same data down to their area, and no more of this copying from one building to another, right? Where's the data? Oh, it's in the cloud. So go get it and pull it down for your needs.
I have one global golden copy of that file versus previously it would be, I put a copy of that file on my laptop and it may become orphaned, it may be out of date. Now with the POC, we had users doing this collaboration. A user in Houston puts up a new file. Within minutes, that file's available in Europe or in India, and the collaboration was great. We also invited a number of different users to try and beat this stuff up. A lot of different departments, a lot of different business areas. We invited them, hey, put your data out here, just test data. And everybody was happy. It was business as usual. They really couldn't tell the difference between what we had current and what was on the Nasuni, and everybody came back, yeah, this is working fine.
Very methodical. I mean, the first was a technical POC, but then we moved into 5 sites of just actual testing data. And so it wasn't, all right, just throw some garbage data out there. No, this was real data that we had approval to put out there. And then they started to beat it up and see how it performed.
We kind of set our SLA for the file servers is your bar is Office 365,
Your
it's
performance.
SharePoint. Yeah,
Yep.
that is your performance bar. We will not be any worse than that. Because when you say, oh my gosh, you're moving my file shares to the cloud, everybody thinks performance. Well, with the Nasuni hybrid model, where I have that data locally in an edge device, that
Your experience will
performance
be as good or better
Yeah.
than what you're already having with Office 365.
That migration started us down the path of more insight to what is actually on our filers.
It's been a side benefit of Nasuni to understand what the data is and who it is. Under our traditional filer space, we knew we had filer space out there, but we're not sure we actually had control or the management of who was using that filer space, or maybe necessarily where they were coming from. In the migrations, we got our eyes open to, oh my world, it's not just, I'm moving a site at a manufacturing plant. I am, but oh, by the way, this other plant that's maybe 100 miles away or 2,000 kilometers away is using that filer space too. It's like, well, why are you doing that? Nasuni was very helpful in that and giving us tools. Our service providers were very good in getting that data and some ideas as well.
We really had no technical issues per se during the migrations. It was just a matter of when I have, so many tiny files that may be rather old, that's just mechanics. That's not a technical issue. That's just the nature of the beast.
Being in an HCI environment in some of the larger sites, we could utilize that to create a VM for that edge appliance. There were some smaller sites though where we ended up buying more of an appliance standpoint, and I was probably one of those that said I don't want any more appliances. But yet you look at an appliance and I can put an edge appliance there versus having to buy a server to load a virtualization software on it, to load another OS, to load another VM that has to be backed up, and security. Like, oh, wait a minute, I have to backtrack on that, Scott, and say, oh, I am going to need appliances in some areas.
We mapped out all the sites ahead of time and we set thresholds. It's like, this office really doesn't need a physical appliance or a virtual appliance. We will just spin them up in our cloud provider. And I have had yet today anybody complain about that performance. So we took sites and just totally eliminated any on-premise version of a filer. They just went completely to a cloud-based filer, and I've had zero complaints.
We devised obviously a phased approach. So our first phase was to get rid of the very old legacy appliances and migrate to Nasuni.
We had users in Europe, and they had a file share. They decided to shift the work to a group some of the work to a group in India. The folks sitting in India are now connecting back to a file share in Europe.
Wondering why it's slow, and the latency was there.
And after we moved that European site to Nasuni, I heard about this latency issue. I said, give me a minute. And it was a couple of clicks, click, click. Now, an user in India, instead of coming all the way back to Europe, is now connecting to a local Nasuni edge. Latency issue solved. Everybody's happy. And I have not heard a word from them since. The other one was our engineering department with the 3 sites around the world. They came to us and said, we heard about Nasuni. We really want to get in. We want to help. We need to improve our global collaboration. We said, okay, we will set you up. So we set them up on their 3 edge devices around the globe. They have now moved 170 terabytes of their data from on-premise file shares to 170 terabytes in our cloud provider that they're collaborating around the globe. Everybody's happy.
Security is always watching over us, right? They were there to protect us. They were starting to scan our filers within the Nasuni environment on-premise, and we started to get complaints from, say, a group in Texas.
I can easily see, oh, there's an account. Why is this one account doing 50% of the activity on a filer?
John soon discovered it was our scanning and monitoring of the file system.
Hey, security, what exactly are you doing? Well, we have this data protection scanner.
set up another edge within Azure, and we'll point your scanner, because the metadata and the core data is in the cloud. You can scan everything from there and not impact our on edge.
And it literally was click, click, I now have an edge.
That move, or the flexibility to be able to do that and do it within minutes, has been huge.
How do we improve our DR position? How do I improve my RTO, my RPO? Our existing infrastructure was a daily snapshot that was copied to the cloud, but my RTO could be hours. It could be, some of our systems that we had left behind that we hadn't virtualized. Those could have RTOs of days, depending on if I can get parts on some of the aging filers.
Complex. Yep.
Plus, it was complex. I have a snapshot. Now I have to stand that snapshot up. I have to give users access. With Nasuni, that kind of goes away. I've got the continuous versioning, allowing those users to roll back any changes they want as far back as we decide to let them. Our DR position, with the Nasuni solution, we tested it. I can DR a site. I can return a site to operation within an hour. Some of the testing we did, it's more like 30 minutes. And again,
and that site could be the same site that I left from a disaster, or it could be a hub site in the same region, or we can go to the cloud and restore from there. So that recovery point is, where do I want it? To wrap around to what started us down this path, we're on the next phases in the tail end of Nasuni, but what it has met is all of our first expectations of moving to the cloud. When we first started that journey, we had capacity issues, financial issues, end-of-life environment. How would we transform this solution into a true cloud-provided, flexible, grow as you need, reduce as you need environment? We've come full circle now on that, and we've met each and every one of those points that we originally looked at.
We've definitely improved our global collaboration. Where we've rolled it out, the teams are very happy. We know we are much more efficient when they're collaborating. And the other thing is, I'm now managing those 92 sites from a single pane of glass. I've got the Nasuni Management Council. I see all the shares. I see all the filers. I see all the software versions. I see who's doing what, and it's all a single pane of glass versus managing those 92 sites individually.